Before I get to the review, I have to ask a really important question. And I know I asked this last week, but it bears repeating. Where was all the hype for this show? Wouldn't you want to make a bigger deal out of this than you did? You want ratings, right? That's why you prioritize the TV show over the pay-per-views. Well, this show gave you a golden opportunity to rake in the viewership. It was pretty much the biggest impact you've ever done, aesthetically, in front of the biggest crowd you've ever had, supposedly, and we barely heard word one about this on the TV show. They didn't even bother turning on the hype machine. Now, I'm sure there was advertising for it in the UK, but here in the States where the ratings are most important, nothing. And when you consider the match they gave away here, a match they built up to for months, a match that could have and hopefully will main event Lockdown, it just makes the lack of promotion for this show all the more baffling. They should have been airing promos for this and talking about it weeks in advance, but they didn't do a damn thing. They might have put a video up on the website or the Facebook page or something, but that doesn't really count. If you have to go to these places and actively seek out this promotional material, that's not advertising. That's just half-assed. I mean, really, if their advertising department is going to do so little to pump up a huge event like this, then it's really not that different from blatantly advertising the WWE during their show. And thankfully, no one would be stupid enough to do that. Hey! Who turned out the lights? What the hell's going on here? You know, I consider myself a tolerant person, but when you do things like this, it fills me with hate. So much hate that I just like to... Okay, so this week, Impact Wrestling was brought to us from the Wembley Arena in London, England, in front of the biggest crowd they've ever had, according to them. The crowd was awesome all night long, and did that make a huge difference? Absolutely it did. But judging from some things I've seen, I think some people may end up overhyping this show just because the crowd was so great, and because they were so relieved to see the show get out of the cast member zone. Not that I wasn't right there with them, but let's keep things in perspective here. Was this the greatest Impact of all time? Not necessarily, but it was up there. And it was a really, really good show. It was paced very well, all the matches delivered, the booking was good, except for that one weird part. Now granted, there was too much of the Garrett Bischoff thing this week, but the trade-off for that was that they spared us Eric Young and ODB. Another great thing was that they really took advantage of the arena and the crowd. Remember last year when they did the on-the-road TV tapings, I think it was in Huntsville, and like 75% of the show was backstage pre-tapes and they barely spent any time actually in the arena? There was none of that here. This time, pretty much the entire show was in the arena, minus one or two little things, and that does make a difference, and it was obvious immediately. They started off with Bobby Roode and Bully Ray. They get the crowd riled up by teasing them with Jeff Hardy, then saying Jeff Hardy's not going to be there. James Storm and Sting come out, and they set up the main event for Against All Odds and the two big matches for that night, with Storm fighting both of them. That was kind of a strange decision. I failed to see how competing against both these guys in separate matches in the same night is doing Storm any favors. I mean, I know Storm was asking for it, and Sting did shoot down the handicap match suggestion, but it seemed oddly heelish that Sting would even let that happen in the first place. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, a good short opening segment that set up a number of things that would happen later, and it did end up making sense for the story they were telling, so it wasn't a big deal. Next came the weird match of the night. It was Matt Morgan and Crimson versus Samoa Joe and Magnus, who got a total face reaction despite being the heels, by the way, in a Buckingham Brawl match. Haha! No pain at all. So the winners of a coin toss get to fight under Tornado Tag Team rules, while the other team had to fight under normal rules. Gee, I wonder if a certain someone had a hand in booking this.
Oh shit! It's been Russo! What the hell is this all about?
Now, despite the bizarre gimmick, the match was good. It had a clean finish, Joe and Magnus got the victory, which they really needed, and I can forgive it for being on the short side because they can't give away the whole pay-per-view for free, but the gimmick was really bewildering. It reminded me of that asinine Knockouts Lockbox Challenge from a while back, where they'd come up with this completely random gimmick from out of nowhere just so they could move the story in a certain direction, but the fact that it was so random just made the whole thing feel more contrived than anything else. Now, this never reached the Lockbox Challenge levels of stupidity, but it was kind of the same idea. They pull this coin toss stipulation out of their ass just so they can put Morgan and Crimson at a disadvantage to give the heels a win when there were much simpler ways of doing that would have made a lot more sense. I mean, that was a really big stretch to make just so you could book a win for a team that was getting cheered like conquering heroes at this show anyway. And so the gimmick was a throwback Russo moment that I just had to shake my head at. But, as I said, the match was good, the right team went over, and it was nice to see Magnus get the pin in his home country. That was cool. Then came the Bischoff family soap opera. Bischoff calls out Garrett, and they go back and forth about whether or not Garrett's mysterious trainer is actually there. And as you can imagine, it's an absolutely pointless segment because they already revealed that you-know-who would be there when the show started. And they came back to this in the second hour. They finally introduced the trainer. Anyone but Hogan. Anyone but Hogan. Anyone but Hogan. It was Hogan. Fuck! So Hogan comes out, and immediately him and Garrett proceed to make Gunner look like the biggest jackass you could imagine. So all that build-up they had with making Gunner look like a killer with him taking out Jesse Neal and Doug Williams and Bob Van Dam, that's gone now. That was rendered meaningless here, so I guess it's back to the drawing board with him. Then they had this really lengthy interview package with Hogan just blabbing on and on and on and on about how TNA is this close, brother, this close to shooting right through the roof. Pretty much the exact same speech he was constantly making when they first brought him in a couple years ago, and anyone with 2 brain cells to rub together knew it was complete bullshit, because the business doesn't work like that. Certainly not TNA's business. I mean, even if they are on the way up, it's not like they're about to strap a rocket to their back or anything. It's going to be a slow, gradual climb just like it's always been. This was the one part of the show that you really couldn't make any excuses for creatively. 2 damn segments they gave this, and the interview package. The second segment, fine. The interviews, okay. You want to put over Hogan's return. But the first segment was not necessary because everyone pretty much knew what was going to happen anyway. They could have done something with AJ, Kaz, and Daniels in this segment, and I really wish they had, especially considering how much the audience hated the Bischoff-Garrett exchange. But there was a silver lining here. They were really trying to get Garrett over as this mega babyface, and the crowd, God bless those UK fans, the crowd was not buying it for a second. They were chanting boring, just pissing all over this guy, and live reports said it's going to be the same deal next week. And that was all the proof anyone should need. We are not in the impact zone anymore. You take Garrett away from the cast members, put him in front of real fans in a real arena, and lo and behold, they saw right through this. Those fans took one look at Garrett and they saw a guy who, by all rights, really should be an OVW, but instead he's on TV with this huge push getting endorsed by Hulk Hogan, all because of who his dad is, not because he's earned or deserves any of it. And you really can't argue that point at all. I mean, I'm not saying Garrett couldn't become something in the future, but thus far he hasn't proven a damn thing other than the fact that he's pretty bland and boring on the microphone. And yet, miraculously, his push continues. Gee, I wonder why. By the way, was I hearing things, or did Garrett's music sound an awful lot like a remixed version of the True Blood theme song? Maybe it's just me. Next was the X Division match, Austin Aries versus Mark Haskins, who apparently still exists. Nice to see that Haskins changed his look. He doesn't look like the love child of Edge and John Morrison anymore. I really wish this match had gotten more time because it was pretty terrific for the 4 minutes it got, minus that botch at the end. I would encourage Haskins to lay off the shooting star press if he can't really nail that thing, but otherwise this was damn good. Although, and this is really going to sound like I'm nitpicking now, I wish they could have reintroduced us to Haskins prior to this. They did have the video package for him, which was great, but this show being the first time he's been booked since August, you kind of got the impression that they booked him for this just because the show is in the UK and he's a UK wrestler. And yeah, I know that's pretty much exactly what happened, but it shouldn't feel that way. There were more organic ways of utilizing Haskins than just throwing him on the show when we haven't seen him in months. It's really just a minor gripe, but I just wish they could have set this up better beforehand. Then at 10 o'clock, that's right, 10 o'clock, we had James Storm versus Bobby Roode. No, it was not announced in advance. It was not promoted prior to this. The match was made that night. It happened an hour later. Disregarding that, it was an excellent match. I'm going to be saying that a lot this week because pretty much every match on this show was very strong. This had a criminally small amount of hype, but at least TNA didn't shit on it. It was the hour main event. It got a fair amount of time. There was at least some effort on their part to make it look like the big deal that it should be. Although one thing it was really missing was JB doing the intros like he does for the main events. Both guys busted their asses. Storm even did the Frankensteiner at one point, which is the kind of thing you don't see much from him. I mean, I know he can do it, but he doesn't pull out stuff like that every day. Roode gets the pin, ultimately, and these are the kinds of wins that Bobby Roode needs if he's going to be an effective heel champion. He had a competitive match and got the decisive pin. Yeah, there was interference, but at least he didn't look unnecessarily weak beforehand. And the interference only lasted for a second or two, and he came out of this segment looking pretty strong. Now, running away from Sting isn't doing him any favors, but it is what it is. It came off well, and admittedly, this was a really big show for the company, so I'm partially at ease with them giving this match away for free, but it still baffles me that they did it. I mean, also, with this match happening on TV after all that build-up, I would not expect Storm and Roode to face off one-on-one again until Lockdown. Call it a hunch, but I think it's unlikely we see it before then, and honestly, I think that would definitely be the right call at this point. They did Gail Kim versus Tara in a non-title bout, giving away another pay-per-view match for free, but it was very good. There were a couple uncharacteristically sloppy spots from these two, but certainly one of the better knockout matches we've seen in a while. But there was this one spot at the end where Madison Rayne jumped into the ring, ran at Tara, missed her, hit Gail instead. Earl Hebner is literally 5 feet away looking right at this, and he doesn't call for a DQ. I don't know why. Maybe he just enjoyed seeing Madison Rayne being made to look like a total idiot like I did and decided to roll with it. Barring that, I would like to see what Gail and Tara could do with more time, and hopefully they'll get it at the pay-per-view, although I'm a little less interested to see that now since they just gave this away for free. I mean, it's almost like they're encouraging us to not buy the pay-per-views at this point. I don't get it. And the show finished with James Storm versus Bully Ray in the main event. Now, by all wrestling logic, it should have been Storm versus Roode in the main event, but I think with the story they were telling, it sort of worked like this. They're building up a fatal four-way at the pay-per-view, and they had Bully Ray helping Roode in the first match, but Roode leaving Bully Ray by himself in the second one, increasing the tension between them. Plus, they showed how James Storm had all the odds stacked against him, lost in the first match, got injured, but still came back from behind and won the second match, so Storm came out of this smelling like a daisy. Now, given all that, I think I can excuse the admitted awkwardness of having these two matches in the opposite spots they should have been in. The match was more about generating sympathy for James Storm than anything else, but it did that well, and the audience was hot for him, so you really can't bash this that much, even if it was on the slow side. Really big night for James Storm. And Jeff Hardy couldn't be there because of his probation, so they had Storm pulling double duty, and he got put over great, which was awesome. And overall, this Impact was really good. The matches were strong, the pacing was tight. The Garrett Bischoff stuff was overdone, and them giving away pay-per-view matches for free is something that I'm just going to have to live with. I mean, yes, they're screwing themselves out of pay-per-view buys doing this, but that's their problem, not mine. The crowd totally made this episode. Going back to the Impact Zone in 2 weeks is going to be really painful after this. And one more thing. Hey, guess what? Your test results finally came back, and the news could not be better. Oh, really? So is it like I thought? Have I just become immune to all your stupid gimmicks now? Nope. You have a tumor. What? Yeah, a tumor. A big fat tumor. Oh, could this be the greatest day of my life or what? I mean, oh. It's benign. Ugh. Damn it.